Members, order of the day number 4.
Financial Assistance for Live Organ Donors Bill, first reading.
Mr Speaker.
Chris Bishop.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Financial Assistance for Live Organ Donors Bill be now read a first time. I nominate the Health Committee to consider the bill. Sir, I would like to start by acknowledging my friend and colleague, the Honourable Michael Woodhouse, who first proposed this bill, has his own member's bill and whose reasons for doing so are similar to my own, which I'll touch on in a second. Sir, I would also like to acknowledge Dr Cam Calder, who took up the bill and kept it on the ballot after Michael's much-deserved promotion to the ministerial ranks. It would also be appropriate, sir, to acknowledge the efforts of Dr Jackie Blue, who previously attempted to improve organ donation legislation through her own member's bill in 2007, and to acknowledge the tireless campaigning of people like, in particular, Andy Tukey, who support this bill and continue to support the cause of organ donation. Sir, I've had preliminary indications of support for the bill from many members in the House, and I thank them for that. Sir, this is a very focused and specific bill which aims to deal mainly with two issues surrounding live organ donation. The first purpose of the bill is to adequately compensate altruistic New Zealanders who, through the goodness of their hearts, choose to donate an organ to a friend, a loved one, or even a stranger. The current compensation amounts to the equivalent of a sickness benefit and inadequately recognises and supports the hardship that these individuals face when they make the choice to give up an organ in order to save a life. The bill, sir, would allow donors to be paid up to 80% of their average wage for 12 weeks of recovery, along with other childcare payments. The second purpose of the bill is to reduce the financial barriers to becoming a live organ donor. While the reasons for New Zealand's low organ donation rates are varied and many, one significant barrier is the financial hardship a donor suffers through lost wages and other associated costs of recovery. Sir, this bill will seek to address that issue by ensuring organ donors are supported in the same way that we support injury and recovery through the ACC system. This bill replaces and improves upon the 2005 ministerial direction, and it's only right and proper, in my view, that we elevate such an important issue which impacts relatively few New Zealanders but affects us all. Like many members' bills, and like the Honourable Michael Woodhouse before me, I was motivated to take up this cause after meeting the very people who have been affected by it. During one of my first candidate meetings in 2014, I spoke with 68-year-old Sharon van der Gulik, who had been living with renal failure for more than 2 years. She could barely walk and needed 15 hours of dialysis a week. Her story will be familiar to many New Zealanders, sir. And like many in her situation, her best option was a live kidney transplant. She was at one point given just 2 weeks to live, and dialysis had become so awful she could not think of continuing treatment past the age of 70. Fortunately for Sharon van der Gulik, her incredibly brave 27-year-old grandson Matt was able to donate her a kidney. But it was tough on him. The $206 or so paid by work and income was not enough to cover half his mortgage, and Mrs van der Gulik herself had to help keep Matt financially afloat, sir. Mrs van der Gulik and her son, in my view, are exactly the kind of brave people this bill attempts to support through proper compensation. There are numerous other examples, sir, of organ donors and donees around the country, and I'm sure members will have their own stories from their own constituencies. I think it's wrong that at the moment live organ donors are essentially penalised for their altruism, facing a large loss of income, even though their actions save lives and contribute to a healthier New Zealand. Moreover, sir, the current system actually, in many ways, favours the wealthy. If you have a relative who can afford to take time off work and the financial sacrifice that entails to donate an organ to you, and they have a match, then you've got a good shot of getting that organ. But if you have someone who does have a match, but who can't afford to take the time off work to donate an organ to you, then you're obviously in a less advantageous position. Sir, that's an inequitable situation. This bill improves upon it. The second issue, sir, the bill seeks to address is of New Zealand's low organ donation rates. It's relatively common knowledge, I think, for members in the House that our rate of organ donation in New Zealand is low by international standards. It's about half that of Australia, and it's well below Spain, which is the world leader when it comes to organ donation. There are more than 550 New Zealanders waiting for an organ transplant. 450 of these people, sir, are waiting for a kidney transplant. People waiting for a heart transplant, a lung transplant, or a liver transplant may die without a successful transplant, and those waiting for a kidney transplant lead lives restricted by long-term dialysis treatment, very debilitating. There are many reasons for this lamentable situation, sir, and the government actually does have quite a comprehensive and wide-ranging work program to address that. That program is starting to work. The numbers of New Zealanders receiving an organ transplant rose from 176 in 2013 to 217 in 2014, which is a 23% increase. This includes an increase in kidney donations from live donors as well, but it is clear we must do more. So one barrier to people being willing to donate, sir, is the financial sacrifice they're forced to make. This bill reduces that sacrifice considerably, and I've described it, sir, as a small but useful contribution to the government's wider work program to improve our organ donation rates. In the words, sir, of Elsie Howard, who was on the front page of the Dominion Post recently, who donated a kidney to her father, "You're being penalised for working and then doing this for someone. If you want people to step up and donate, make it worth their while. Don't make it so hard to do something for somebody else." And that quite really encapsulates what this bill is all about. Sir, the bill will have a small fiscal cost, but I believe that taxpayers will be better off if it passes into law, if it works as intended and it does increase organ donation rates. The reality is that organ transplants save the taxpayer a lot of money. This is good economics. So a recent study by Elizabeth Prasad at the University of Canterbury indicates that it costs taxpayers $281,000 to treat a 50-year-old male with dialysis over his expected lifetime at a 7% discount rate, and that compares, sir, to $149,800 if he was given a transplant. There are therefore very large fiscal gains for the taxpayer and for the government from increasing organ donation rates. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this bill greatly increases the support for those brave New Zealanders who every year sacrifice part of themselves to save the lives of others. It will also go some way to removing the financial barriers to live organ donation and help address aspects of New Zealand's low organ donation rate. It recognises rightly the large commitment these altruistic New Zealanders have to those in need and acknowledges how grateful we are as a country to them. Sir, let me close my speech by paraphrasing one of my former colleagues, or one of the colleagues of my colleagues here, Dr. Jackie Blue, who said during the first reading of her own organ donation bill 8 years ago that we propose many pieces of legislation which deal with government efficiency, updating legislation and making the lives of New Zealanders easier, but very few can lay claim to improving the quality of life or even save the lives of New Zealanders. This bill is one of them. She was talking, sir, about her bill, but I believe that is equally true of this bill. And on that note, I commend the bill to the House.
Question is that the motion be agreed to.